So you just got your first pellet grill and you're worried about cooking your first brisket because nobody wants to waste $60 to $80. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the method that I use to smoke this brisket is going to change the way you look at barbecue. We used the foil boat method. We did not wrap and we rested for 6 hours, and let me tell you what, this brisket's like a trampoline. I'm gonna show you every step involved to make this awesome brisket using the foil boat method and putting on that Texas Crunch bark. Now let's get started. First off, when you get a brisket, you have to trim it. I've already trimmed this. I went around, took off the oxidized edges, trimmed the fat cap down, removed the decal fat, and shaped it in a more aerodynamic shape. Part of that is removing some of the thinner parts so that it cooks more evenly. Some of those parts would get overdone and overcooked if you didn't trim it off, so it's best to just get it out of the way now. When it comes to brisket, there's a few other key components. First off, you usually start with a binder. Most people start with yellow mustard, so that's what we're gonna do today. We don't need a lot, we just need a little bit, and we're just looking to get the rub to stick. And a little bit goes a long way. We don't want it to be too thick. Literally just using this as a binder so that the rub will stick. Now, I started out with a 15-pound brisket. There's quite a bit to trim off. I probably am down to about a 12 and a half pound brisket at most. When it comes to trimming your brisket, one thing that you want to make sure is that you've got a nice sharp knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, it's going to work against you and it's going to make it that much more difficult. Now, the next thing I suggest is using a cookie sheet of some sort. And what you want to do is use this to catch the rub. That way we can kind of shift the brisket around to make sure that we're getting the rub intact on all sides and edges. So for this, I made my own rub. The recipe itself will be down in the description. We want to put this on heavy, and no fear to do so because our pepper to salt ratio is a little bit low. That way we're not over salting it. But we're going to put this on nice and thick. That's going to give you that nice Texas Crunch bark. And don't be afraid of the pepper. As it cooks down, it won't be as peppery as it seems. I'm gonna throw a little bit down into the cookie sheet there. And the reason why is I'm gonna pick the entire brisket up and I'm gonna start pushing the sides down into it. That way we get that good rub all the way around. Now that we've got this seasoned up, we've got the Camp Chef running at 250 degrees. Let's get this in. We've got the Camp Chef running at 250 degrees and we're gonna run it at 250 all the way through. Now we're gonna put this in fat cap up. Let's go ahead and get it in. We're gonna put the point towards the left side. And we're gonna center it right like that. We're gonna leave the brisket in there for the next 2 to 3 hours untouched at 250. We're just gonna let it run. Today we're running with some of the Knotty Wood 100% almond pellets. It's the first time I've used them and I've heard nothing but good things. So we're gonna see what it can do on this brisket. So we are about 4.5 hours in. I checked the temperature, we're sitting at about 160 degrees. Bark and color is still not exactly what I want it to be, so we are going to hold off. All right, we're about 6 hours in. We're reaching about 170 degrees. I'm gonna take this out, show you what the foil boat is all about. We're gonna leave this fat cap up, just like we've had it this entire time. What essentially we wanna do is create a foil boat around this. Now, I found this out from a buddy of mine, Brad from Chuds BBQ, and what that's gonna do is gonna help create a crunchy bark on the outside, and it's gonna help maintain those juices inside the boat and keep everything nice and juicy. So, just like you see it, 2 sheets of heavy duty wide foil. We got the brisket laying down right in the center, fat cap up, and you're just gonna grab and essentially just create a boat. Basically just looking to create a foil boat just like this around the brisket. Keep it nice and tight. If you notice that the edge of the flat may be drying out or getting a little too done, you can always you know, fold or tuck in the foil like that to give it a little bit of coverage, to protect it a little bit. This is gonna keep the fat cap exposed. It's gonna continue to build that bark, but it's going to be sitting and rendering in its own juices, which are gonna help make a better overall brisket. From here, it's gonna go right back into the smoker at 250 degrees, and we're gonna run it like this until it's done. As you notice, the surface is not dry. Haven't had to spritz this at all with anything, and as long as the surface looks good like this, we're not gonna touch it. Now let's see how this brisket's doing. This brisket is actually getting pretty close. We probably have another half hour, 45 minutes before we remove it from here and get it into its resting period. We'll see in a little bit. All right, so it's time to check the tenderness on the brisket. We're gonna be using my ThermaPen 1 to check the temperature, but one of the things that you wanna remember when it comes to brisket or pork shoulder is it's not always about temperature, it's also about feel. So by using your probe, you're gonna be able to feel, you want that soft, buttery feeling. Temperature at this point, we're looking for around 203 degrees, but it might be a little lower, it might be a little higher. Like I said, what matters is that butter soft feeling. So when you feel that, it is time to pull it out. And I'm checking it right now, and you know what? I'm getting that butter soft feeling. So this brisket is gonna be coming out. So we're gonna take it out of the smoker. We're gonna let it cool down just a little bit, maybe 10, 15, 20 degrees, somewhere in there. We're gonna get it in a foil pan, and we're gonna get it into a holding place, which is gonna be my oven, which is set at 170 degrees. And it's gonna sit at that temperature until it is time to eat, until it's time to slice it. Now that's one of the key components to cooking a brisket, is being able to allow it to rest. And to be honest with you, it's better to be finished early, because we can hold this overnight, we can hold this for a long period of time, than it is to hurry up and rush it at the end, because that rest period is just as important as all of the other parts of this cook. So we just wanna make sure that we give it enough time. So like I said, this brisket is gelatinous. It is soft. It is time to get it off the smoker. I've got myself a foil pan. I'm gonna get this brisket set down in there, and it's gonna go into that holding period. And so from there, it's gonna be several hours before we talk again. But when we do, it'll be time to slice up this brisket and see exactly what we did. All right, I spent the last 16 hours dedicated to this brisket. I showed you how to trim it. I showed you how to season it with that homemade seasoning. We got it in the smoker. We talked about that, the temperatures. We rested it for 6 hours in the oven at 170 degrees, and it is time to give it a try. As you can see, this thing is super, super tender. I've got all those juices left over from my foil boat, and we're gonna be putting that on this as we cut it. But let's see what kind of damage we've done. I don't know about you, but that is one juicy looking brisket. So let's get a couple slices here. See how tender this actually is. Now there's a test that everyone does. Tell you what, I think we did it too. All that work means nothing until you give it a try. So let's see what that first bite's like. Now I can tell you right now, if you looked at the rub that I used, it's very heavy on the pepper side. But once this cooked down and once we smoked it, honestly, you just get a nice Texas crunch. That is really what we're referring to when we use that kind of rub. Using that foil boat method and exposing the fat cap for the entire cook also gives it kind of a crunch to it. It's not crispy, but it's got a little bit more texture than you would typically associate with a brisket. And to be honest with you, that's phenomenal. On top of that, this thing is so dang juicy, I don't want to squeeze it. Everybody squeezes these on camera, and why would you want to get rid of all that great rendered down fat? We're not going to do that. But I'm going to tell you what, if you're new to barbecue and you want to do yourself a brisket, this method here is almost foolproof. It is super easy and it produces an amazing brisket. If you like amazing briskets and amazing barbecue, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time at Anderson's Smoke Show.